You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. Welcome to Dolphins Talk Weekly, your one-stop audio breakdown of all of this week's Miami Dolphins news. Now, here is your host, Kevin Dern.
This episode of Dolphins Talk Weekly is brought to you by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, and all of the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a birthday gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? No worries. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they'll ship to you. International fans too. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com. Caneswear.com. And welcome back into another episode of Dolphins Talk Weekly. I am your host, Kevin Dern. You can follow me on Twitter at KevinMD4. Follow the show on DolphinsTalk.com, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you're listening to your podcasts. We're there. Flying solo on this podcast tonight. A 20-17 victory for the Miami Dolphins in week one of the regular season over the visiting Jacksonville Jaguars. This podcast, as recorded on Sunday night, will probably lead into Monday by the time you hear it, so it's a victory Monday for us. And with that, this one is not a new whiskey, but we'll bring the whiskey segment back into it. We've got an Isle Scotch, one of the island scotches from the Tobermory distillery on the Isle of Mull. This is called Legic. It's a 10-year-old Scotch. I think I've had it on the show before. Pretty good. I remember gave it like a 3.8, 3.9, 4.0, somewhere around there out of 5 stars. It's got all the notes that you would expect from like an island Scotch. You know, got the maritime air, you got some of the seaweed flavor on it, you've got the saltiness of the air, you get the oakiness of the bottle, you get a little bit of the peat, and it's almost like a great line on this one was by Daniel Whittington of the Whiskey Tribe and Wizard Academy, if you follow that channel on YouTube. He said it's almost like one of those scotches where if you leave it in the barrel for another 2 years, what would it taste like? Would it be even better? And I tend to agree with that. It kind of tastes like a little bit sweet on the initial taste, and then it kind of tastes like an Isla Scotch as you swallow and it goes down. But pretty good one, easy drinking for tonight because, you know, it wasn't great today, so we're not diving into the big bottles, but we'll do that if we beat the Bills on Thursday night. More on that later. But anyway, speaking of that, just a couple of housekeeping items. As we know, Evan Morris, my co-host, is heading off to Whidbey Island in the Pacific Northwest to fly EA-18G Growlers for the United States Navy. So Evan probably won't be with me on shows for most of the regular season. I think there's a couple opportunities he and I talked about where we could do some co-host podcasts and do some fun things that way in the regular season. But most of these game reviews will be me flying solo. So I hope you're able to withstand my allergy-ridden voice again for another week. Hopefully we'll get out of ragweed season pretty soon and it'll be back to normal. Because our week 2 matchup against the Bills is on Thursday Night Football. Because it's a late game, I will not record a podcast immediately after the game. I have some big meetings at work on Friday and have a personal commitment Friday night, so that podcast review will probably not be recorded until Saturday. So just wanted to put that out there, but we'll be back recording Sunday night shows after every Sunday day game as we move forward. And the way tonight's show is going to go, we're going to cover the offense, the good and the bad, the defense, the good and the bad, the special teams, good and bad, kind of give my overall thoughts, and then we'll do a quick preview of Buffalo, just because I won't have time to turn out a full episode to preview the Bills game between now and Thursday. So let's start with kind of my overall thought. It was a good, hard-fought win. Jacksonville's been a pretty good team the last 2 years. They were a playoff team 2 years ago. They missed it by a game last year, but had a winning record at 9-8. Pretty good defensive front, especially Devon Hamilton, Eric Armstead, and then the two edge guys, Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen. You kind of knew that would be a tough ask for week one. And today's game, it kind of felt like an Adam Gase era game. Like, offensively, you had trouble stringing together drives for a lot of the game. You relied on some big plays. Defensively, you got turnovers, you got sacks, you made some big timely plays, but the run defense was not very good for most of the game. Just kind of struggled along, but then you look at it statistically, Miami won the turnover battle. They won the time of possession battle. Miami outgained Jacksonville by more than 130 yards. You held Jacksonville under 140 yards total passing on the day. So some really nice things accomplished by the Dolphins, and most importantly, they won the game. Lot to correct, and I think Mike McDaniel said it best in the video clip. If you've seen the post-game victory locker room speech, he said it was a grown-ass man win. A lot to correct, but kind of one of those games where, they probably lost that game last year and the year before. You're down, 14 points, down 10 points at two different times. You're looking at going down 24-7, and Javon Holland makes the play of the game with that peanut punch on Travis Etienne, and the Dolphins recover. Totally changed the game because the next play you get an 80-yard pass to Tyreek Hill, and all of a sudden you're down by a field goal instead of 17 points. So, lot to correct. You got to kind of put the corrections on the side burner for now, not the back burner, the side burner, because you got the Buffalo Bills coming into the house in 4 days on Thursday night. The only time we've beaten Buffalo under Mike McDaniel was playing them at home early in the season. That was his rookie year as a head coach, week 3. Now you got a chance to do it here week 2, Thursday night. Buffalo's a short team on a road week with a lot of departures. They struggled against Arizona today and held on and found a way to win at the end. But if there's ever a time you'd want to catch Buffalo, it's probably this time. And if you have any hopes of winning the division, you need to get to 2-0. But we'll talk about the Bills later. So on offense, we'll dive into the good. Timing was a little off at the beginning of the game. Tua, I thought, made some pretty nice throws, and you had Hill and Berrios and Hill again kind of just not get open on their routes and had some overthrows because of it. But Tua, 23 of 37, 338 yards, a touchdown, 9.1 yards per attempt. To my knowledge, I didn't see all of the late window scores, but to my knowledge, it was the leading passer in the league going into the night game. And then you got 100-yard games out of Hill and Waddle. Hill 7 for 130 and a score. Waddle 5 for 109. I love Devon Achane's involvement in the pass game and really the run game. 17 total touches for him, 10 carries, 7 receptions, and a touchdown. But I feel like Miami needs more from just those three guys. Like Raheem Mostert, only 7 touches on the day, 6 carries, under 10 yards. Jonnu Smith didn't really do much of anything. Durham Smythe, Braxton Berrios, Julian Hill, Grant Dubose, kind of non-existent. So tough to play offense when you don't have some more auxiliary pieces to kind of complement at least the big three for today. Interestingly, though, I felt like a very heavy screen game, and I think that's largely because, it's week 1. Jacksonville played their starters a pretty good amount in the preseason, especially compared to what Miami did. And you've got 3 really good pass rushers on that front: Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, and Eric Armstead. And we got pressure and sacks from 2 of those 3 guys today. Felt like Miami kind of lost their way a little bit in the first half, trying to hit all these screen games. And, on third downs, you're throwing literally, I guess it's not even a pass, it's a lateral, in space, trying to get out wide. Couldn't really go north and south, and you kind of knew that going in just because Jacksonville has Devon Hamilton in the middle, And Foye Olakun, the middle linebacker, that dude can play for my team any day. He was tremendous. The offensive line, 3 sacks allowed, but I don't think it's as bad as everyone makes it out to be. One of the sacks was actually in the first half when Tua took off and tried to run, but it's from where you start your slide, so he actually sacked himself by sliding for a 0-yard loss. I'm not sure how that's a sack versus a run for no gain, but it was listed as a sack. You had the other sack where Eric Armstead just beat Liam Eichenberg one-on-one clean and got to Tua. And then the third one, you had, I believe it was Josh Hines-Allen, beat Austin Jackson off the edge. Tua kind of kept going backwards instead of stepping up in the pocket and tried to spin to his right. Liam Eichenberg tried to get in the way and that didn't do anything, and Tua took a sack and took him out of field goal range on that drive. So you could argue that 2 of those 3 sacks were more on Tua than anything else, but still not good. I think what people are going to confuse for the offensive line being bad in the run game is more so on the tight ends. Durham Smythe, Jonnu Smith especially, and Alec Ingold especially. Those 3 got obliterated today on multiple occasions. Sometimes you just have to tip your hat. Ryan Nielsen, best mustache in the NFL as far as coaches go, the Jaguars defensive coordinator. And then Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen were just absolutely just menaces off the edge today for Miami. Couldn't get a lot going until in the second half they started doing some lead toss and crack toss and sort of the misdirection where Tua turns one way and pitches it back the other. That was about the only time they got anything going on the outside, perimeter and run game. Anything they did that was a straight up outside zone, the Jaguars just ate it up. And Olakun was a tackling machine. That dude's a really, really good player. I don't think I really understood how good he was until today. But, yeah, just nothing doing on the edges for Miami. And, Ingold was blown up multiple times. Durham Smythe, probably the worst game I think he's had as a Dolphin. Didn't help that he had, 1 pass hit him on the helmet and dropped 2 others. Jonnu Smith didn't really do much of anything today. Like, Julian Hill was the best tight end we had. And they even played Tanner Connor in the second half a little bit just to get some blocking on the field because, Braxton Berrios, again, disappeared. Hard to play offense when you know where the weapons are. And Jacksonville did everything they could to make sure they didn't get beat deep. You had the one big throw from Tua to Waddle on the corner route, and then you had the touchdown play, which was just a deep crosser, and Hill turned on the Jets. I think Miami against Buffalo needs to come out and play a little bit more vertically on offense than they do horizontally. I think there was too much kind of pussyfooting around with trying to beat Jacksonville horizontally, kind of the way almost reminded me of the game plan against Kansas City in the wild card game. And he didn't really take it to him. But I guess the big thing is the short yardage woes were kind of cured today. And they did it in some pretty unique ways. They narrowed their splits down and had Devon Achane line up on an offset look as a single back and took just ISOs right up the middle in condensed splits, and got a touchdown out of it. And then you had Alec Ingold in an offset eye taking fullback dives right behind Liam Eichenberg, who was just whoever he killed on those 2 short yardage plays. He absolutely murdered them. Liam Eichenberg, of all people. Durham Smythe had a great block on one of them as well. But, that was the answer to the short yardage stuff. 12 personnel was kind of the package they needed to stay in today. I think they got to it in the second half with Durham Smythe and Julian Hill and eventually kind of found their way in a lot of the play action stuff. I think they were messing around too much, trying to have too many eligibles out of the formation, out of the backfield early in the first half. That works when you have Odell Beckham and River Craycraft and Malik Washington, and Jonnu Smith's more comfortable than a few preseason snaps into the offense, and you didn't really have any of those today just because of injuries and such. Very, very screen heavy in that game, which kind of surprised me. But you made plays when you had to. I thought Tua showed pretty good poise got everyone collectively together. You're about to be down 24-7 with a little over 2 minutes left in the third quarter. You come back to win the game. You put drives together when you needed to in the fourth quarter. Jason Sanders hits 2 big field goals for you. You come out of week 1 with a win, and you got a chance to do something big in the division going into week 2, which I think is pretty cool. Hopefully, we'll see a little bit more north-south verticality from the offense in week 2 against Buffalo. I also don't think Buffalo's edge players, their starting edge players, Gregory Rousseau and AJ Epinesa, and then now without Matt Milano, although Terrell Bernard's a really, really good linebacker, I think you'll have a little bit more freedom to attack the edges kind of in a standard run setting, and a little more freedom to do stuff in the passing game because, DeMar Hamlin's a great story. He's not a tremendous player at safety. So I think you'll have some opportunities to cure some things on Thursday night. Defensively, this was kind of a tale of two halves. And if you followed the show or listened along, it's very kind of Baltimore-esque. You got some really nice things out of the passing defense. The run defense was pretty bad until the last 3 drives of the game. So we'll just kind of go through that. We'll do the good first. You held Trevor Lawrence to 57% completion rate, 12 of 21. In the second half of that game, he was just 3 of 7 for 37 yards. Hat tip to John Shipley on Twitter for pointing that one out. And then this one was a pretty cool stat. He had a 7.7 yards per attempt, which is pretty low, lower than what Miami was giving him last year under Fangio. And you had some big plays mixed in by Jacksonville today too. So that kind of speaks volumes. But the cool stat here, after the drive when Javon Holland punched out the ball from Travis Etienne, after that fumble, Trevor Lawrence only dropped back 3 times to pass in the final 3 drives. He had 1 incompletion, and they had the back-to-back sacks by Ogba and Phillips on Jacksonville's last drive to basically shut them down. That's pretty telling about, number one, Miami's defense and what you can do when they get everything going right. And number two, a little telling that the Jaguars coaching staff didn't trust Trevor Lawrence kind of in the same way that Miami's coaching staff trusts Tua to be able to pass the ball when needed in situations like that. Otherwise, Miami did some good things. You won the turnover battle 1-0. Should have been 2-0. I don't know how Duke Riley didn't come up with the fumble recovery on the kickoff. They held Jacksonville to 2 of 8 on third down conversions, 0 for 1 on fourth down conversions. So, 25% on third downs and 22% overall on third and fourth downs. The fourth down stop was tremendous. If you watch that play, they tried to run Etienne to the left. Emmanuel Ogba blew that play up along with Jordan Brooks. And I think what's really cool about that play is watch Jaylen Ramsey on that play flow all the way across the field. He runs about 40, 45 yards to absolutely obliterate Etienne when he cut back to the right along with Kendall Fuller. So that was a really cool play. In a lot of respects. Good to have Ogba back. Good to see Jaylen Ramsey doing a lot of things closer to the line of scrimmage. Holland's peanut punch was the play of the day for me. Really, it's prevented Jacksonville from getting a 17-point lead, and Miami scored the next play. Some more of the good stuff. Good to see Jalen Phillips back out there after the torn Achilles. He played 38 of the 50 snaps they had, got the game, basically the game-clinching sack from a defensive perspective. He and Ogba, back-to-back sacks to close that one out after a great stop by David Long, who was pretty good in that game. I thought Phillips and Ogba set the edges really well. But then you kind of play off that into some of the bad, like the run defense. I've talked about it all offseason. It was a concern of mine. You had some pretty ugly run fits today. And essentially what you're doing in this formation is you're playing the wide 9. So this is essentially the same type of defense we've seen since Bradley Chubb was acquired, and I won't have a chance to watch all 22 film on this before another podcast, but you had Jordan Brooks and David Long got in the wrong gaps a couple of times. You had some of the defensive linemen kind of got beat down. I thought Calais Campbell kind of wore down as the game went on. They started bringing in Deshaun Hand more, who had some nice snaps. Benito Jones didn't play a whole lot. Brandon Pilley didn't play a whole lot. I think it was just kind of an over-reliance on Calais Campbell. Zach Sealer got pushed around a little bit in the first half. Quentin Bell, cool story in camp, but he probably shouldn't be out there over Mo Kamara. And then Chop Robinson only played 13 snaps. He had an offsides penalty. I don't think he registered a stat. Had a couple nice pressures, just kind of, you can see the potential, but you've got a lot of work to do to build up that skill set. The run fits were bad. You need to adjust some of those alignments. I thought Miami would kind of stem their front a little bit more today. And they got caught a couple times with the Jaguars being in bunch looks or having nasty splits where, the tight end is detached from the line of scrimmage or detached from the tackle, but right there. That's kind of a telltale sign that you're going to get a crack toss or a crunch play. And, this happened twice, especially after Jake Bailey's 2 punts, one that pinned him at the 4 and one at the 2. You gave up big runs after both of them, which is just piss poor. It's contemptibly bad complimentary football, and you had terrible run fits. I usually don't swear on this podcast, but Jordan Poyer was fucking awful in today's game in terms of run fitting. He made a couple business decisions out there that were reminded me of Will Davis, if you remember that name. Or what's the kid? Jimmy Wilson. Those guys would make some business decisions out there, and Jordan Poyer did that. Was very disappointed in Jordan Poyer's game today. You can tell he's lost a step, and why Buffalo was okay letting him go. He was not good at all in the run game today. Wasn't much better in the pass game either. You need to play Marcus May. Poyer was pretty soft today. I don't know what else to say about that. Just was not good. And you have 2 drives where, Jake Bailey, who gets a ton of shit from Dolphins fans who probably don't understand, a lot about special teams and how you're actually trying to pin guys back. He's had some mishits, but you got a punt that downed Jacksonville at the 4 and another at the 2. The one that you landed at the 4, you gave up a 96-yard touchdown drive off of. The one that you landed at the 2, you were going to give up a 98-yard touchdown drive until Javon Holland punched the ball out at the 2-yard line. That's got to change. I thought the coverage was pretty poor. Miami did a lot of delayed blitzes and some exotic stuff in the first half. Jacksonville picked it up, I think, once they started just straight up blitzing, especially with Ramsey in the second half or the linebackers in the second half. You really got Lawrence off his spot, like we mentioned, 3 for 7, 37 yards, and 2 sacks in the second half. Kind of right to it, but Poyer wasn't very good. He missed some zone stuff. He missed, the drop on the quarters coverage on the touchdown that Trevor Lawrence threw. And tip your hat, Trevor Lawrence threw a great ball to Brian Davis. But yeah, that's on Jordan Poyer. Jaylen Ramsey, had a pretty egregiously bad pass interference penalty that puts the ball at the 1, so you're just kind of handing Jacksonville that first touchdown. Kader Kohu, fun story, good player in the slot for the most part. He gave up a big completion there, but goddamn, he sucks on the outside. You cannot rely on him as a perimeter corner, whether it's the field side or the boundary side at all. Miami needs Cam Smith to develop because you cannot live with Kader Kohu on the outside. Opposing offensive coordinators are just going to circle 4 and 21. Figure out how you can get those guys on the same side, and you're going to get chunk plays because Poyer and Kohu were awful today. I would rather see Storm duck get those reps than Kader Kohou on the outside. He's a fun player in the slot when you can keep things in front of him. He had a couple nice tackles today. He finally missed a tackle, which I don't think I ever recall him doing. But, man, he and Poyer in coverage were just awful. Javon Holland was great in coverage, had a punch-out on another third down pass play. Ramsey was really good outside of the pass interference one. Yeah, just, I thought they really cleaned it up in the second half. The run defense was much better outside of Tank Bigsby's run from the 2-yard line when he got like 12 yards or whatever. But I think most of the stuff is correctable. I think your run fit stuff is correctable. Obviously, at some point, you're going to get Bradley Chubb back. I think you're going to get more out of Benito Jones and Deshaun Hand, especially in the rotation, as you kind of get a better feel for what they're good at. You need to rely less on people like Brandon Pilley, Quentin Bell, Kader Kohou, and as much as Dolphins fans are going to hate it, Jordan Poyer. You need to play Marcus May more in this game, or even Elijah Campbell if you want to keep more speed on the field than Jordan Poyer. It was bad. But I think Anthony Weaver did a nice job of adjusting. You didn't allow a single point in the second half, thanks to Javon Holland's punch-out. But, stuff you can correct. And I don't know that you're going to get all those corrections done before Thursday, especially against a division rival who knows you pretty well. But I think you have a chance to work on that in those extra days off you have before you got to travel to Seattle. Special teams, and then we'll shift to a quick preview of the Bills. Special teams was by far and away the best unit of on the field for any team today. Which kudos to Danny Crossman. A lot of people want him canned and have wanted him canned for a long time. They had the best unit on the field. Really, the only two nits you have that I would have would be Jason Sanders' missed field goal. It was just a miss hit. It happens. Sanders has always been better for doing the left to right hash than right to left, which that one was. I think he overcompensates, and he pushed that one way left there. It's like a golfer trying to play a slice, and then the one time you think you've got it lined up, you don't slice, it just goes into the trees. That was that one. But kudos to Jason Sanders for coming back and hitting the tying field goal and then nailing the 52-yarder to win the game. Enough Jason Sanders slander. Jake Bailey, 2 punts inside the 5. He was tremendous. The coverage units were great. You forced a fumble. I think that was Saran Neal. And then Duke Riley almost recovered it, which really would have shifted the momentum of the game at that point. But that unit was great. And again, I think overall, this game felt like an Adam Gase era game. A little disjointed offensively. You couldn't get drives going. You stalled out a couple times because you couldn't get conversions, but you were throwing to like Braxton Berrios on a 4th down and Durham Smythe on a 3rd down, and just kind of a weird, clunky first half for the Dolphins on offense and defense. But then you made big plays on defense with the turnover, the sacks, the incompletions, the 4th down stop. You hit the big play to Tyreek Hill, to get the score, and then you kind of opened yourself up and drove the ball a little bit better after that. Just kind of felt like an Adam Gase game. I think there's a lot of things that are correctable. I think you did a lot of good in that game that's going to go unnoticed because the fans are so on edge about the offensive line, and because you didn't run the ball well, and because the stat sheet says you gave up 3 sacks, they're going to blame that on the offensive line when really only one of them is truly their fault. And even in the run game, I think most of the woes are more falling at the feet of guys like Smythe, Jonnu Smith, Julian Hill, Alec Ingold. Your tackles didn't do a great job in the run game unless it was like a crack toss or a lead on a pole. But I think a little bit of that was to kind of be expected against a front as good as the Jags were. And if you remember, Ryan Nielsen comes from New Orleans. Go back to 2021, that Monday night game against the Saints when the Saints were missing like 20 dudes due to COVID. and you had like Pete Werner was like the best player for the Saints on the field that night. Miami couldn't do shit offensively. You won that game 20-3, and 7 points were because Nick Needham got a pick six, and they made Tua look pretty doggone bad that night. That's that defense you saw out there today with some pretty good players in it. And I think Jacksonville is going to make some noise this year as we get further along in the season. Shifting gears, though, Hard Rock Stadium Thursday night, you got the Aqua throwback jerseys on for the Bills in Week 2. Big divisional battle. Buffalo looked pretty sorry at times today against Arizona, and then came back to reel off a 34-28 victory. Josh Allen, was Josh Allen. Didn't have to do a ton through the air, but still, I think he was 19 of 23 and had 4 touchdown passes. But one of the trends I noticed, the Bills were very reliant on James Cook. 19 carries on the ground. The other running backs they had only had 5. Josh Allen had 9 carries. Without Stephon Diggs, they spread the ball out quite a bit. 9 different Bills players caught a pass. The Cardinals did rush for 124 yards and averaged 5 yards per carry, but Kyler Murray had a pretty big chunk of that. I think he had 59 yards on some scrambles. And they still have a dangerous duo on the edge. Gregory Rousseau, one of their starting defensive ends, had 3 sacks on the day. Von Miller had 1. They had total 4 sacks, all from those 2 guys. I think Miami's got a chance to kind of establish their run game a little bit more against Buffalo. I don't view Gregory Rousseau, A.J. Epinesa, Von Miller, at this stage of Von Miller's career anyway, none of those 3 are as good of edge setters as we saw against Jacksonville today with Walker and Hines Allen. Daquan Jones, not Naquan, who's on the Dolphins practice squad, but Daquan Jones, pretty good player on the interior with Ed Oliver. But I think Miami's had success running against those guys in the past under Mike McDaniel. You think back to some of the games that they lost. You can go back to 2022, the Saturday night game in Buffalo. Raheem Mostert had a huge day. You go back to the regular season finale last year, as much as you don't want to. Devon Achane had a huge game, especially in the first half. Miami ran for over 100 yards in the first half. I think you can push these guys around a little bit more than what you did against Jacksonville today. I think really it's just can you get to Josh Allen? Can you avoid letting him beat you with his feet? And can you keep things in front of you and prevent the big plays? This game, I know it's a Thursday night game, and early in the season, those are usually kind of clunkers. It's hard to judge based off of what you saw last week against Kansas City and Baltimore, because that was week 1 for both of them. You're coming off a short week for the first time now. Typically they're lower scoring. I could see this one being, 27-24, 23-20, right around there. Kind of the same kind of game flow as we had today, where maybe you're going to need the offense to kind of carry the load a little bit more than the defense until you can get some footing set up. I don't think Buffalo's running game will be as adept as what we saw from Jacksonville today. And again, I think some of the bigger runs that the Jags got via Tank Bigsby were just bad run fits, where you had players out of position because they're doing a little bit too much or trying to overplay certain things that they shouldn't have. I think you'll be able to fix that moving forward. So I feel like this game is there for the taking for the Dolphins. I was on the Finside the NFL show on YouTube with Reason and Richmond Webb and some other Dolphins YouTube personalities. We had to do a game-by-game prediction of our record on the season. I'm at 12-5, and I had Miami winning this game on Thursday night. I think they can beat Buffalo. I think the stars are kind of aligned, and it's more of an if not now, when is this going to happen? Because you're 2-11 against the Bills since Josh Allen has taken over as their quarterback. That's pretty terrible. You got to start to change that narrative, and it starts Thursday. For the Dolphins, we'll wrap this one up. The 3 game balls for me. Splitting this one will be, we're going to go all J's today. Jason Sanders and Jake Allen are going to split the third one. Jason Sanders, he rebounds after a bad shank. makes the game-tying field goal, drills the 52-yarder to win the game. Jake Bailey, by far his best game as a Dolphins punter, 2 inside the 5 is tremendous, although the defense didn't do any favors after that. Those two splitting a game ball. Jaylen Phillips gets a game ball, incredible recovery coming off that Achilles injury. Comes back, plays the edge really well against the run, made some nice plays, gets the kind of the game-clinching sack that gets Jacksonville's offense off the field. And then Javon Holland, the peanut punch. That was a really nice play. I thought his run support was good. I liked how they got him involved as a blitzer and kind of foiled some of the stuff Jacksonville did. He made another pass breakup on a key third down where they put him outside one-on-one in coverage, which was kind of an odd look, but I like it. Those 3 guys getting game balls from me, or 4 guys really, Javon Holland, Jaylen Phillips, and then Jason Sanders, Jake Bailey split one. The Dolphins, week 1 victors over the Jacksonville Jaguars 20-17, and you got a home game Thursday night against Buffalo. You guys can follow me on Twitter at KevinMD4. You can follow the show on Spotify, iTunes, DolphinsTalk.com, wherever you listen to your podcasts. That's going to do it for me on this episode. Like we said, next episode will be probably recorded on Saturday after the Bills game. I have a commitment on Friday night I cannot miss and probably won't be able to record. So Saturday into Sunday is when we'll have the next Dolphins Talk Weekly episode out. Again, Dolphins Talk Weekly brought to you by Caneswear. Caneswear is the place to go for officially licensed apparel for the Miami Dolphins, Miami Heat, the Hurricanes, Florida Panthers, and all of the professional and college teams in South Florida. Looking for the latest jersey, a birthday gift, or the newest hat to hit the market of your favorite South Florida team? Check out Caneswear for their overwhelming selection of sports apparel. Located at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida, Caneswear has it all. Not in South Florida? No worries. Visit Caneswear.com to shop their inventory from the comfort of your home, and they'll ship to you. International fans too. Caneswear.com is the spot that Miami fans shop. That's Caneswear.com, Caneswear.com.